There are exactly 3 groups of people who will watch this video. Those who know about Unfiction and have followed or engaged in it themselves without knowing it classified as Unfiction. Those who have never heard of the term and haven't seen anything that falls under the umbrella of Unfiction. And those who have been around long enough to know where the name comes from and what fits under the umbrella. But no matter where you stand, all 3 groups will benefit from a journey on this path. Unfiction has been here for a while, and it's time to open the door more than a crack, because the room behind it has grown bigger and more recognized for over a decade. I'm Nick Nocturne, creator and host of Nightmind, a YouTube channel that's been dedicated to the realm of unfiction and new media art projects since July 19, 2015. Years before that, I was a fan and participant in the field, introduced through the major unfiction event known as the Cloverfield game in 2007. This unconventional method of storytelling has ignited my passion and fueled my obsession for over a decade, and out of its study in broadcasting, I went from being just a fan to gaining a career in service to it. But what precisely is unfiction? You all know what fiction is, but what would unfiction be? A synonym for nonfiction? The truth? No. But the cardinal rule of unfiction is pretending the fictional is true. You might recognize a lot of what's considered unfiction by a much more popular label, ARG. This stands for Alternate Reality Game, a term coined around the same time that unfiction was born. The Cloverfield game, my introduction point to the field, was one of the most popular alternate reality games ever produced by mainstream media, and it was quickly joined in the following year by Why So Serious, an ARG for The Dark Knight. Everything you know about alternate reality games stems back to efforts by mainstream companies extending a storyline for a movie, actually. And that idea first came from an independent effort that had everybody fooled, the Blair Witch Project. In 1999, the promotional team for the film chose the path walked by the movie itself. Sell the idea as hard as you can that this actually happened. Punch a hole between realities, blurring the line between truth and fiction, and give viewers a way to access an alternate world. The Blair Witch Project was marketed as genuine found footage, with a website mocked up with false police reports, fake newsreels, and information requests on the missing characters. Missing person posters were made and circulated, and a fake documentary special was created for the Sci-Fi Channel, discussing the monster legend investigated by the missing characters and their disappearance. The effort was a massive success, making Blair Witch Project the 10th highest grossing film in the United States in 1999, making back over 4,000 times its budget. Not only was it shown you could make an excellent film for a shockingly small amount of money, a storyteller could use the internet and even other media outlets to expand a story well beyond the boundaries of the movie theater and create extremely exciting buzz. No surprise then that Hollywood took notice, and their effort to experiment with this new idea of storytelling hammered in the nail that Blair Witch made. In 2001, Steven Spielberg presented his new film, AI, Artificial Intelligence, which had a surprise for anyone who looked closely at its trailer and even its poster. A credit for Miss Janine Sala for her role in the film, Sentient Machine Therapist. There was also a coded telephone number which, when called, presented instructions leading to an email discussing Evan Chan, a murder victim whose violent end involved Janine. In the first few weeks, only about 100 people discovered the secret, but their number quickly grew when they came together online and formed a community, which they called the Cloudmakers. This whole event spawned quite a title for the ARG that ended up making the art form's initial phase stick. The Beast. For a time, they even called the act of making an alternate reality game beasting, because this entire form of storytelling was so new, there just wasn't a term for it yet. Following the success of The Beast, EA Games tried to get in on the field with a subscription-based title, Majestic, and ABC came up with an online companion to their sci-fi show, Alias. Meanwhile, the Cloudmakers assembled to create their own game, codenamed Lockjaw, and it was during this process that the term we've come to know today was born, as well as all of the problems with the term, which would then lead to one of the most important websites in the whole field, Unfiction. Unfiction.com arrived in 2002 and brought with it a forum, the Unforum, a place to discuss alternate reality games and anything like them. It was created by Sean Stacy, who went by the username SpaceBase. A blog written on November 10, 2006 recounts the origins of the term ARG and Sean's thoughts about it. A few years ago, in the midst of my first draft of A Trail for Lockjaw, an early alternate reality game, I came up with that very term. Yes, I am that particular idiot, for the lack of any better way to quickly convey a feeling for what might be involved in the information that followed, cataloged on that page in excruciating detail. That same impetus to try to categorize a nascent genre, to distill a definition into a more memorable soundbite, drove me to create the Unfiction site, mainly because I realized that I could not define the genre so easily as I might have wished. This site became my surrogate definition. Instead of repeatedly explaining at length what these things were, the idea went, I could just point people to the site instead. As has been readily apparent to those active in the ARG community, however, there has never been any collectively agreeable, concrete description of alternate reality games. In the blog, Sean goes on to talk about his observations concerning alternate reality games, attempting to figure out what qualities of a project actually define it as an ARG, and what elements people go wild over. How do you even define these things, and why are they so obsessive? A lot of thinking went into Sean's discussion, leading to a need for alternate reality games to be placed in a greater context. What he came up with was chaotic fiction. I define chaotic fiction as a fictional construct that begins with a set of rules, uses those rules to run its scenario through an organic computer comprised of audience and author, and ends with a finite body of work that was not predetermined. This is to say that, though the authors, those who set the rules and started the production of the fiction in motion, may have been able to predict with some measure of certainty what they might end up with upon completion of the product, since they did not have complete control during production of every element of creation, they could not say with absolute certainty beforehand exactly what would be created by the process. Why chaotic fiction? Well, the chaotic part describes the fact that the final product is not predetermined, but rather unpredictable. And the fiction part is because what is being created is not real, it's imagined. Chaotic fiction is produced in tandem between the authors or performers and the audience or players, and requires input from both sides. It begins with a set of ideas and ends wherever the performance or play may take it. The authors may set it in motion, but they must work together with their audience to see its conclusion for the first time themselves. By its nature, it is improvisational in its production. Now, that's all well and good, but one of our groups watching this video right now, which might include you, will recognize the problem here. There are a lot of cases of chaotic fiction that are easily classified as alternate reality games, and right next to those examples are alternate reality games that are not chaotic fiction, because they've always had an author-intended ending. Then, of course, we've had projects come up for about a decade now that don't even classify as games, but have been called ARGs and lumped in because no other name has worked. Chaotic fiction doesn't work for them either, because they're not chaotic. They break rules, but to say it's chaotic or for the purpose of a chaotic fiction ending isn't quite correct. In this blog entry, which lasts 3 pages, Sean ultimately presents the chaotic fiction argument as one that in many cases could work, but doesn't fully stand up as a whole umbrella. And if he could have seen into the future when he wrote the blog, he would have had a lot to consider, especially when seeing how much linear, non-audience influenced material ended up being thrown into the ARG box. Which leads us to the problem that developed in the wake of Sean's chaotic fiction presentation. It was a nice idea, but it just didn't cover everything in a simple way that could be understood in a single utterance. And over the years, members of the ARG scene began witnessing projects that kept breaking conceptions. The name game bounced back and forth time and time again. ARG or chaotic fiction? Transmedia or multimedia? How about cross-media? Does cross-media storytelling work? What do you guys think about cross-media? What do we call projects that got meta and began acknowledging their fictional or immersive state? This debate would pick up every now and then, and ultimately never resolve, with everyone just falling back on the catch-all of ARG, even for projects that weren't games. As the field grew and occasional debates came and went, one thing stayed the same. Viewers, players, and participants would find a home and central hub in the Unforum, attached to Unfiction.com. This was the best possible resource if you want to know about a new game, web series, and anything cryptic, creepy, or odd. Before Wikia, before Reddit, Unfiction was the answer. And it would still be an incredible resource and hub of information and community today if it hadn't been for misfortunes about 3 years ago. Details are fuzzy on the event, especially because the master post explaining what happened was on the forum, but the Unfiction forum went down following a major storm that dropped a tree on the home of either Sean Stacy or one of the webmasters. This matches information from the short-lived Unfiction Twitter account, which posted the following on July 26, 2017. Bad news. The forum's front-end web server went down over the weekend. It will need to be replaced and data transferred to fix forums. Worse news. It looks like the forum software, which is pretty agent by web standards, is not compatible with latest PHP versions. This presents a dilemma. Should we try to start over with newer, different forum software, or is it time to retire the forums altogether? Obviously, they did not want to retire the forums, but the situation was tough. Members of the community attempted to come together to solve the problems, but it seemed none of them knew how to salvage the old forum and bring it up to date. As a result, the Unfiction forum and all its years of archived information on projects in the field went down. There is no current knowledge on whether it can somehow be salvaged, and all attempts to access the Unforums fail. The Internet Wayback Machine only has so many pages saved. Since the fall of Unfiction, the viral power of new projects has grown, and the rate at which projects appear has only increased. This brought up conversations and considerations once more about the term ARG, and if it even really applies to the majority of what's been showing lately. The irony of it all, and the years spent on the Unfiction forums reigniting the debate, is that the answer was there the whole time. Sean's surrogate catch-all term, the name of the site itself, was actually all they ever needed. What's even funnier is that when you look at the prefix for the word in conjunction with fiction, the adoption of the term as an umbrella name is actually supported by the history of alternate reality games, dating back to the days of the Cloudmakers and their Lockjaw experiment, given to them by the very thing that started it all, the Beast. Unfiction. We know that fiction is storytelling. It's not real, it's fake, it's make-believe. Fiction is playing pretend. The prefix un literally means not. Combine the two and you get not fiction. One of the absolute core elements of this whole scene, be it a web series, fictional Twitter account, or full-on ARG, is the element of insisting in the reality of what is clearly not real. The fiction is always trying to put on the air of being not fiction. The Unfiction site itself has a glossary for terms that date back to the days of the Beast, and one of them is TINAG. This is not a game. Here's the full definition. A defining mantra of the alternate reality gaming genre, first put forth embedded in trailers for the movie AI, which spawned the original ARG, The Beast. The Blair Witch Project sold itself entirely on making people believe it was not a movie. It was not a legend. It really happened. AI artificial intelligence told players very sternly and directly in one of its own trailers, "This is not a game." And every major successful effort afterward, from Cloverfield to even modern projects like Dad, insists that no matter how fictional it is, this is not a game. Chaotic fiction may only work as a label some of the time, but far more often, the idea of unfiction, this immersion-bent character-playing, not fiction storytelling, is present in nearly every project that has ever come to be part of this field. Whether or not an audience member can interact with it or is simply here to watch and puzzle things out on their own while playing make-believe. Unfiction as a true umbrella term works in more ways than that, however. When you think of the nature of internet storytelling projects and media that breaks its traditional boundaries to be more immersive, you can come up with a ton of adjectives that follow the pattern of the label. Unconventional, uncanny, unannounced. Unconventional fiction fits, uncanny fiction fits, and unannounced fiction absolutely fits, because one of the cardinal rules of these projects is that you never say you're just playing make-believe. Underdog and underground also fit, seeing how the majority of what appears now is made independently by creators at home with no company supporting them. Unfiction is also unexpected and, quite often, unpredictable. Finally, the recognition of unfiction as a catch-all term does something deeply important. It recognizes the work done by Sean Stacy, the whole website team at Unfiction, and every member of the Unforums. It pays tribute to one of the most important, impactful, and successful community hubs and champions of this entire field, honoring years of service and those who served it, used it, loved it, and supported it. We wouldn't be where we are now without Unfiction, and even if the Unforums are lost, keeping the term alive means some part of that era will always live on. ARG, weird art, web series, chaotic fiction, all those labels can work just fine and they help out immensely with sorting and categorizing projects, helping creators and participants alike. But when we just say unfiction, we not only catch it all, we remember the origins of this field and make sure a whole period of creativity, community, and support for this effort in storytelling is never truly lost. It rolls off the tongue, it sounds cool, it serves everybody, and it keeps the memory alive. This is not a game. This is Unfiction. Okay, cool. That was all very sentimental and historical, but what is Unfiction in actual terms? Well, that's pretty easy. Unfiction is a realm of storytelling, mostly based on the internet, which defies conventions of the medium or website it's working with and stays in character as much as a WWE wrestler. These wrestlers run by the rules of kayfabe. You are this character, you act as this character on camera and in person, and you do not break character in a space where you are recognizable as that character. It's the same rule for Disney park employees in costume and at Universal Studios. As long as you're in the zone of the role or wearing the costume, you don't break character. The reality of the story follows you around. That's the air of an ARG, immersive horror web series, storytelling Twitter account, and Unfiction in general. Remember, this is not a game, even though it totally is. Take it from me. I, for instance, am Nick Nocturne, a shape-shifting demon taking the form of a four-eyed black cat monster, which is what my audience informed me they'd enjoy most as my form when I began doing YouTube, a job I pursued as a way to interact with society, enjoy my earthside freedom, make a living, and still feed off human emotions and adoration without getting into the kind of trouble that would send me back to hell. As a demon, I've had way too much experience shape-shifting into forms that required me to stay in character and create unique experiences that were as real as possible, without letting a summoner or victim know I wasn't actually the form I was taking. If you break character, you kill the vibe and it just gets the whole experience closer to every other thing in the medium you chose to tell the story. You can't just admit that you're playing pretend or being a character and have been doing that since the very beginning, even if some people don't get it and are misunderstanding it or mischaracterizing it. You would wreck everything for the people who do get it and are enjoying it. So, anytime you encounter someone or something out in the wild that seems too fake or like they're playing a character, take notice, because you might have stumbled onto some unfiction. That doesn't just go for online, that goes for celebrities too. Elvira, Lady Gaga, Eminem, Marilyn Manson. You'd be surprised how many celebrities are truly just characters that they're playing. Now, when you notice some unfiction in action, it can take you several ways. Maybe it's a web series that styles itself as a vlog from a real person who begins experiencing the paranormal, and they're just as baffled and scared as you are. Your role in this is to enjoy it in the mindset of its reality, even though it's fake. It's a game to you, but for the characters, this is not a game. So even if your position is on the outside looking in or as someone who can only interact on social media, that's where you stand. You're a kid on the playground being accepted into a make-believe situation, so go play. Sometimes you'll have full-blown alternate reality games, which are stories that have genuine game elements, usually in the form of puzzle solving or taking a specific action. Some of these are linear and want you to be involved for the sheer enjoyment of it. Others have story segments that are influenced by viewers' actions and feedback. And some of them are chaotic fiction, with stories that are effectively written by the audience's input. The best distinction you can make is this. If there are factors that clearly require or allow direct audience involvement or action, either to influence the direction of the story or gather pieces of it hidden behind a game mechanism, like solving a code to get a YouTube link or traveling to a set of coordinates to dig up an old backpack full of documents which complete understanding of the story, it is absolutely an alternate reality game. You have to play, not just watch. If the experience will go on with or without your involvement and have an ending predetermined by the author, and you didn't need a load of external documents, videos, or minigames to understand the story, it is not an alternate reality game. It's an unfiction experience, and that stands true whether it all happened on YouTube as a web series with information and clues you can read into, or a series of info dumps using text, pictures, video, and audio across several websites. A game needs a player. An experience never will. That's the key here. Need. Plenty of experiences can and do have alternate reality game touches and elements, but if they were not needed for a viewer to reach the end, and the player or viewer interaction did not affect the outcome or story direction, it's not an alternate reality game. What it is interactive. It is unfiction. A game needs a player to reach its conclusion or bring that conclusion to the public. A story will be told whether or not someone is there interacting, and there will be no interaction gateways preventing the info from reaching the public. Let's take a look at some examples to get our bearings using a crowd favorite and a leader in the field, Wham City Comedy. Unedited footage of a bear is an unfiction experience, and there are two qualities that render it unfiction. First, the short film plays with the medium itself to break its boundaries in more ways than one, presenting an unskippable YouTube ad even though the short film first aired on TV, and then breaking the boundaries of the ad setup to launch into a horror scenario with a message, all while playing it straight. Second, the experience carries over online to an interactive form, using a web page based on ClearDrill to deliver a player into the reality of the character from the short film. So if there's a playable element, why is this not an alternate reality game? There's a whole gameplay half, isn't there? It's because you would never actually need the gameplay half in order to understand the story. The story has been told, and its message and impact delivered whether or not you ever go to the Clairgel site. We have an Unfiction project here, and it can be called an experience, because it's not just an art project, it's not just a short film, it is something that, in full, can be labeled an experience. Now, let's look at what came after. This house has people in it. This time, we absolutely do have an alternate reality game, which falls under the umbrella of Unfiction by being an ARG. In This House Has People in It, we have a short film presented much in the way we were shown the Clairgel commercial, with a sequence of events we can witness but not actually fully understand. We have a launching off point for the story here, but it is up to you, the viewer, to become a player and use information found in the short film and surrounding it to dig up the real bulk of the project, which is found online. Once you get there, you have a lot of legwork to do, putting clues together, going through bits of information, watching videos, reading documents, even finding the sculptor's playground video in order to get the bigger picture and complete the story, which involves coming to a conclusion of what it all means based on the evidence provided. To experience This House Has People in It in full and come away with understanding, you need to play its game. How about another old crowd favorite and a giant of a field, Marble Hornets? This is absolutely Unfiction, but it can be chalked up to just an Unfiction web series, despite all the codes and to the ARG videos. With or without you, Marble Hornets was going to tell its story, and it had a written, predetermined ending. We even had moments of Jay as a character helping viewers solve codes. None of the important code-breaking moments would be left up to viewers to progress the story. Now, compare that to Cat Ghost, which was very heavy on the web series side, but had a mini-game component for every episode released. Cat Ghost can be classified as an ARG, because at the end of the series, while you might sort of get an idea of what just happened, you're going to be a lot more in the dark than you would if you had played the games, taken notice of codes and messages in the series, and worked through other interactive touches. You can enjoy Cat Ghost on a video level purely as a glass-half-full scenario, but you would need to play for the whole experience. Going forward, always ask yourself this to determine if you've got an ARG or an Unfiction project. Does it need me to take deliberate actions to truly understand or move the story forward? If the answer is yes to either condition, it's an alternate reality game. It is a reality you are interacting with in a game-like fashion for a reward or the continuation of a story. That is a game, point blank. Anything else, just call it Unfiction and then whatever helps you make it specific. Unfiction web series, Unfiction experience, Unfiction story. You can even have Unfiction albums, Unfiction websites, and Unfiction Twitter. If it's something like Children of the Mirror though, or Chatham, that's not Unfiction, it's just art. Sometimes it's weird art and it requires reading deeper and coming up with conclusions, but that is the way of art. If it stays within the bounds of its medium and in a line of tradition, all you have is art. You've got to remember the cardinal rule of Unfiction. This is not a game. But this has been another Nightmind video. Thank you for coming by my office tonight to discuss Unfiction. Please know that I'm not trying to write any rules here for a field of free expression or be this end-all be-all dictionary. This video is actually the result of talking to several other broadcasters and content explorers here on YouTube who cover ARGs and weird media, with all of us reviving the discussion of what to call all of this stuff we made videos on and keep finding. Because even as a group covering different topics, we found the ARG label just did not work for it all anymore. The end consensus was that bringing back Unfiction was a really solid idea. But even beyond that, it was time to draw the distinction between what is an alternate reality game and what is not. And if something belongs in the box but is not an ARG, what do you even call it? As a community, we had to come together somehow, or we'd all keep running our separate channels using different terms and confusing the whole world. The more I thought about making an introductory and history video based on what we discussed since that conversation, the more I liked it. The ability to discern what is an ARG versus what isn't, and what to actually call things that are not ARGs, that's a problem this field has had for a while. And as you can see, it stems back for years. Giving love and honor to the legacy of Unfiction while having a really suitable one-word term that rolls off the tongue, that just seems right. A form of fictional storytelling that utilizes varying measures of interaction, immersion, or multimedia delivery beyond the traditional bounds of the mediums used to conduct an experience under the role-playing premise. This is not a game. If you'd like to see more explorations and discoveries of Unfiction projects, hit the subscribe button. And if you really never want to miss a new upload on Nightmind, tap that bell icon too. Thanks to all of you for viewing and all of you who've supported the field of Unfiction over the years, especially if you were ever a member of the Unforums. A special shout out to the websites that carry the torch as well, some of whom are still carrying it to this day. ARGNet, the Argonauts Podcast, the Cloudmakers, and Game Detectives. Major thanks go out to my supporters on Patreon who not only keep this field alive and myself on the air, but get their names in the end of all major videos and have access to exclusive Nightmind content too. You can sign up today for literally just $2 a month and get access to over an hour and 20 minutes of Patreon accessible videos. And that's not even counting project videos like my behind the scenes work on last year's House of Leaves series. Every amount helps empower the channel and keep it running. And if you're feeling generous, I've got higher tiers with new descriptions that reflect the changes the Patreon has undergone in the last year. Stick around to see the names of all these awesome creatures of the night. As for socials and places outside of YouTube, you can catch me active at the following. Feel free to check in anytime, I'll be glad to have you. And that's it for now, everyone. Thanks for joining me in the dark again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and I'll be seeing you again with coverage of Unfiction projects old and new real soon. Until then, sleep tight.